Amy had always lived a simple life. She existed to make her daddy smile. She was a strange girl by anyone's standards, stitched together from cloth and cotton, shaped by careful hands and quiet love. Her body was fragile. Her seams loosened easily. Her right arm fell off more often than she liked. But she never complained. Daddy always fixed her. Every morning began the same way. A soft heave-ho, a cheerful greeting, and her eager attempts to carry things that were always too heavy for her small frame. And every morning, Daddy scolded her gently, reminding her she wasn't built for lifting. Yet she still tried, because she wanted to give him something beautiful, a flower from the garden, a token of devotion for the man who kept her stitched and safe. Daddy never refused her gifts. He thanked her, patted her head, and set to work, needle and thread in hand, repairing whatever part of her had loosened this time. He cleaned the dirt from her clothes, read her bedtime stories, and wrapped her in warmth she couldn't produce on her own. Amy adored him. But she also understood something that filled her with quiet worry. Daddy didn't make her because he needed a doll. He made her because he had lost someone irreplaceable, someone who shared her name. One night, after drinking, he told her the truth. He had married young, had a daughter with a smile brighter than sunlight, but his obsession with doll-making consumed him. He missed birthdays, dinners, moments that mattered, and eventually, his wife walked away with their child. Amy, the real Amy, had been only 5 years old. He spoke about it with a voice, about the regret that chased him for decades, about the loneliness that hollowed him out, about how he longed, even after 30 years, to see his daughter again. And then he smiled, a broken smile, and told the doll in front of him that she was a miracle, a companion born from grief, a child of fabric who filled the void he created with his own mistakes. Amy listened, and her cotton heart ached. Daddy always looked happy, but she could see it. The sorrow stitched beneath his smile, the longing he carried, the guilt he never escaped. So she made up her mind. If Daddy couldn't go see the real Amy, then she would bring the real Amy back to him. She asked where his daughter lived. He hesitated, but he told her. He kept the address folded with an obituary, his wife's, a reminder of everything he had lost. He admitted that he once tried writing to them, but never sent anything. He believed showing up after decades would only hurt his daughter more. Amy didn't fully understand shame or regret, but she understood one thing. Daddy loved his daughter and truly wanted to see her, even if he couldn't say it. He handed her the folded paper containing the address, not because he believed she could reach her, but because Amy asked with such sincerity that he couldn't refuse. During their trip to the market later that day, Amy slowed to a stop in front of a flower stall. Not because she wanted anything, but because the flowers reminded her of the real Amy she could never replace. The worry surfaced before she could hold it back. She asked whether being a doll made her lesser, or whether Daddy wished he had the real Amy instead. Daddy didn't argue with her fears. He simply bought a single red flower from the stall and placed it in her hands, as if that gesture alone were enough to answer her. The shopkeeper overheard them. She looked at Amy, confirming her suspicion that the girl wasn't human, but something carefully crafted. Seeing how Amy shrank at her own question, the shopkeeper stepped in gently, explaining that dolls made with real devotion were never seen as inferior. Some even believed they could gain souls because of the love someone put into them. Amy held the flower a little tighter. If that was true, then Daddy really was amazing. It wasn't a miracle. It wasn't magic. It was just that Daddy cared for her, and that alone made her feel real. Amy brightened immediately. Daddy really was amazing. Amy beamed with pride. Daddy really was amazing. Half a year later, Daddy could no longer stand. His coughs grew harsher each day, shaking his whole body. Speaking became difficult for him, but he still used whatever strength he had left to reassure her. He told her she had been a good girl. He told her he loved her. Then he pressed a few letters into her hands. One meant for the flower shop auntie, and one for his daughter. He tried to say something more, but the words never came. His breathing slowed, his body relaxed, and then he simply stopped moving. Amy didn't understand what that meant. She called out to him, tugged at his shirt, waited for him to blink or turn his head the way he always did when she needed fixing. He didn't, so she stayed beside him. She sat at his side through the day, and when night came, she curled against him like she always did when she wanted warmth. She didn't know anything was wrong. All she knew was that Daddy wasn't responding, but he was still there, so she stayed close. She slept next to him. She dreamed of him holding her the way he used to, steady and warm. When morning came, nothing had changed. His body hadn't moved at all. She waited again, touched his hand, called him softly, but he remained completely still. Days passed like that, Amy resting beside him, trying to understand why his chest no longer rose and why his voice no longer reached her. She didn't cry at first because she didn't know what death was. She only knew something was wrong and that Daddy wasn't waking up. In her dreams, she drifted through the quiet memories of her father and the letters he had placed in her hands. If Daddy wasn't getting up, then she had to do the thing he asked of her. She held the letter meant for his daughter next to her. She couldn't fix Daddy, but maybe she could do this one thing for him. So, after staying with him for as long as she could, she left their home for the first time alone. Her steps were shaky, her heart full of confusion, but she carried his last message with both hands. She would deliver it. She had to deliver it for him. Amy set out at sunrise. She clutched Daddy's letter against her chest, pressing it into the soft fabric where her heart would have been. She had never walked beyond the familiar roads around their home, but that morning she moved with a determined wobble in her step. Her stitches pulled slightly with each motion, but she didn't mind. Daddy needed her to do this. On the first day, Amy delivered Daddy's first letter to the flower shop. The auntie opened it right in front of her and read every line slowly, her expression tightening in a way Amy couldn't fully read. When she finished, she didn't say much. She simply patted Amy gently on the head, the way adults do when they want to say something comforting but can't find the right words. Amy nodded and continued walking. Daddy had given her a job. She wasn't going to fail. 3 days in, Amy had already walked farther than she ever had in her entire existence. Every street was unfamiliar. The noises were louder. People stared longer. Her body wasn't built for long-distance travel. Her arms swayed awkwardly. Her legs wobbled, and she had to stop several times to adjust her balance. But whenever she felt herself getting tired or unsteady, she pressed Daddy's letter against her chest. This was for him. That alone kept her moving. A week passed. It rained earlier that day and the ground was still wet. Amy slipped more than once, her small cloth hands and dress getting smeared with mud. She wasn't bothered by dirt. Daddy always cleaned her, but the letter couldn't get damaged. So every time she fell, she made sure her body took the impact, not the envelope. By the end of the day, her entire outfit was dirty, but the letter was perfectly dry. That small success made her lift her head again and continue. 2 weeks into the journey, her coat ripped. A dog had grabbed it earlier that day, pulling hard enough to leave a long tear across the fabric. She touched the ripped section quietly. It didn't hurt, but something inside her felt heavier. Daddy wasn't here to fix it, and she didn't understand why. Even so, she pulled the coat back into place. It was hers. It was his gift. She wasn't going to leave it behind. A few days later, she noticed she was walking unevenly. When she looked down, she realized one of her shoes was gone, probably left somewhere on the path without her noticing. Her bare foot didn't hurt, but the ground felt different under it, and she had to adjust her steps. Her legs had also started to stiffen. The cotton inside her body shifted during long walks, and it made movement heavier and slower. But she continued, dragging one foot slightly, holding the letter tightly with both hands. As long as she could walk, she would keep going. On the 27th day, her body gave out. She fell forward onto the ground and couldn't get up again. Her limbs wouldn't respond the way they were supposed to. The stuffing had shifted too much, and her joints weren't holding steady. She lay there until she heard the sound of a car slowing down beside her. A woman stepped out after noticing her collapsed body on the roadside and picked her up carefully. Amy couldn't explain anything. Her voice was too weak to talk, and even lifting her head felt almost impossible. The woman placed her gently in the car and drove her to a nearby town, saying nothing as she did. Amy couldn't speak, but inside, she repeated the same thought over and over. I still have to deliver Daddy's letter. Amy managed to leave the town the woman brought her to. Her body wasn't fully recovered, but she forced herself to keep moving. At some point on the road, her right arm detached completely. It didn't fall off all at once. The stitching had been loosening little by little during the journey, and now the thread finally snapped. Her arm dropped onto the ground beside her leg. Amy stared at it for a moment. Normally, Daddy would pick it up, sit her on his lap, and sew it back on with steady hands. But he wasn't here. Good thing it wasn't my leg, she thought. If her leg fell off, she wouldn't be able to move at all. On the 37th day, she finally reached the address Daddy had given her. It took her longer than she expected, but she reached the house. She stood in front of the door. Her coat was torn, her dress stained, her arm missing, and her body sagging from the long trip. But the letter was still there. Amy pressed the bell and waited. She had imagined this moment for the entire journey. The real Amy opening the door, recognizing the letter, understanding what it meant. She pictured Daddy being proud that she managed to deliver something so important. She pictured relief. When the door opened, none of that happened. The woman who appeared had the same name Daddy spoke of with such longing, but she looked at Amy with no recognition. Her eyes moved from the doll's worn clothes to the envelope in her hand, trying to understand what she was seeing. Whatever she concluded, it wasn't the answer Amy hoped for. The woman explained, briefly and firmly, that she had no father to receive such a letter. She didn't look angry, just certain that the message couldn't possibly be meant for her. And with that, she closed the door in a way that told Amy the conversation was already over on her side. The sound of the latch settling back into place felt heavier than Amy expected. She stood there holding the letter, unsure what to do. Nothing in her journey had prepared her for being dismissed. She had believed that reaching this house would fix everything. Daddy's sadness, the distance between the two Amys, the pain she could never quite name. Instead, she was standing in front of a closed door with no way to make the woman understand why she was there. She pressed the bell again, not because she thought the response would be different, but because delivering the letter was the only thing she still knew to do. She waited. No answer. Each attempt was slower than the last, as if she needed time to convince herself to try again. The house remained silent. The only sound was Amy's small movements and the soft creak of her joints struggling to hold her upright. She held the letter out one more time, even though no one was looking anymore. She wasn't insisting. She simply didn't know what else to do. She pressed it again. The door opened again. This time, the woman's expression was sharper, less patient. She made it clear she didn't want the letter and didn't want further explanations. She refused the envelope outright, leaving no room for Amy to try again. Then she closed the door with a finality that Amy could feel even without understanding it fully. Amy remained standing there, unsure of what the refusal meant. She had walked so far believing this destination would complete something important, and now she was left facing a door that would not open anymore. She lifted her arm once more, but halfway through the motion she realized there was nothing else she could do. The letter hung loosely from her fingers, and her body felt heavier than it had at any point during the journey. While trying to leave, a gust of wind swept through. It wasn't sudden or violent, but Amy's grip had weakened over the journey, and the paper slipped from her hand as if the wind had been waiting for the opportunity. She reached for it, but her balance faltered, and the letter drifted out of reach before she could steady herself. It landed in a shallow puddle near her. Amy moved toward the letter and lowered herself to the ground, her balance unsteady, water soaking into her dress as she reached for the envelope. Her focus stayed fixed on the letter. She picked it up with her one remaining arm. The paper sagged from the weight of the water, and dark streaks ran across its surface where the ink had begun to blur. The journey she had protected it through, rain, mud, distance, time, hadn't prepared her for the simplicity of losing it this way. She brought the letter closer, as if holding it tightly could undo the damage. The message had survived, though. Piecing together the lines and reading what her father had written, she saw the truth. The water had darkened the paper, but the message itself remained untouched. It spoke of the quiet sadness he carried whenever he looked at her. Not a sadness tied to the daughter he lost long ago, but to the doll he had created, the one whose body he could never improve, no matter how much he wanted to. He wrote of wishing he could have given her joints that didn't stiffen, a frame that didn't fall apart, a form that allowed her to live more freely. His regret was not about the past he couldn't change, it was about the present he shared with her. Every line made it clear that he cherished her deeply, and that he felt he hadn't provided enough for the little life he gave her. The letter wasn't addressed to the woman behind the door. It had always been meant for Amy, the doll who held it now. It was meant for her. The realization drained the last of her strength. Her body simply stopped knowing how to hold itself upright. Everything inside her went quiet. She thought of Daddy's hands fixing her arm, of the warmth she could never produce on her own, of the way he always smiled when she gave him flowers, of the nights he held her when her stitching came loose. Every moment she'd shared with him rose at once, crowding her thoughts until she could hardly stand. She tried to take a step back toward the path, toward anywhere she could steady herself. Her remaining arm shook from the effort as she moved back to the road, only for her body to sag under its own weight moments later. Everything faded. Her vision dimmed gently, the way fabric settles when it's no longer being held. She didn't know the word for what was happening. She didn't know that dolls could reach the limit of their movement, or that bodies, even hers, could simply stop. She only knew she couldn't lift her head anymore. In that stillness, a memory formed. Not a vivid dream, but a soft return to a familiar feeling. She was back beside Daddy, the kind of evening they'd shared countless times. His tools were arranged the way he always kept them. His posture was the one he took when focusing. He held her arm with steady patience, mending the seam as if the world outside the two of them did not exist, calm and warm. It felt no different from the nights he'd repaired her after she fell apart. The memories slowly faded, leaving her with the comfort it carried. When she opened her eyes again, she was lying on a soft bed of clean cloths. The room smelled faintly of flowers. She didn't know how much time had passed, only that she was no longer where she had collapsed. The flower shop auntie had been the one to find her. The letter Daddy left behind asked her to take care of Amy after his death. The auntie understood the doll would now be alone, so she went out looking for her and eventually found her collapsed on the roadside. She brought her inside without hesitation. She cleaned the dirt from Amy's dress, straightened the torn fabric, and adjusted the loose threads around the missing arm so they wouldn't unravel further. She worked quietly, giving Amy a sense of care she hadn't felt since leaving home. The auntie didn't hide the truth. She explained softly that her father had passed away and that the stillness Amy had seen was permanent. But she couldn't truly grasp what it meant for a life to end, only that Daddy was in a place she couldn't follow, yet still felt close to. But the auntie also reassured her that his love hadn't vanished. It lingered in the care he'd given, in the memories she carried, and in the trust he placed in others to protect her when he no longer could. Amy absorbed every word. She couldn't nod or move, but the explanations settled inside her in a way she could understand. In the days that followed, the auntie kept Amy close, bringing her along, keeping her nearby as she tended to her flowers. When they visited Daddy's grave, Amy stood there quietly, her body still weak from the journey, but strong enough to hold flowers for her dad, enough for her to stand upright on her own. Life gradually returned to a calmer rhythm. One night, her auntie found Amy asleep where she sat, her head resting gently on a letter she wrote, peaceful and still, the letter tucked beneath her cheek, as if she had drifted off the moment she finished it. The auntie left the letter exactly where she placed it, knowing exactly whom it was meant for.